do have a quorum here. Got four of us. Okay, well, we'll call this meeting to order. Um, Public hearings, none scheduled. Planning Commission matters. Update of EOA process, housing capacity analysis, HCA, and land use code audit.
Yeah, so briefly, just to amend Planning Commission matters, Marty did bring up that the ethics filings are out. You should have it in your email. So if you haven't logged into your city email in a while, you should be in there. And it's fairly simple now. You did yours, Marty's done his. Okay. So it's not Halloween, it is St. Patrick's Day. You are
But
way
which is the
out of
alternative color to green.
okay.
It is.
I did not know that. Learn something every day.
It's good. We also have that ability.
Yep. So on as far as the Planning Commission matters of EOA process, I just wanted to bring that up again. It's going to go to the council on this is the economic opportunities analysis that determines commercial and industrial ground for the next 20 years. That'll go to hearing with the city council on the 14th. So that process was withdrawn when they did the UGB process, but was basically continued at the council, and they wanted that to come back directly to them. That's why you guys aren't hearing the update. The update, I think we went through it before, wasn't that big of a change. The actual need increased, but otherwise the reasoning behind it was all the same. The housing capacity analysis, this is something we're required to do by the state every 8 years. And so we are at year 6. This is the year we adopt and we get all the data done, and then we adopt it next year, is the plan. For some reason, they haven't signed the contracts at the state level yet, so that's why we haven't started. 3J Consulting will be helping us with that one. That's mostly data driven. They go through all the types of housing we have, the type of housing we need. They're calling it a contextualized housing assessment now, where they actually drill down on the individual types of housing that we lack or we don't lack. And they're also going through an analysis of development ready lands to see inside of our urban growth boundary, like what they think is potentially possible to develop and not. I really don't know why they do that, because we do that with our master plans, but that's all part of this. And with that, I was hoping to include our code audit, because we have all these housing rules that are currently not in our code. And they've become so confusing that no one really knows how to update them. So we need to have kind of this audit to address systematically how our code works. If you change one thing, it dominoes through the rest of it. And in some of these housing codes and criteria, there's not a clear understanding of what they meant. And so there's been a lot of appeals and lawsuits, and like these the DLCD, Department of Land Conservation and Development, basically created the rules based on the legislature, but if they didn't understand what the legislator meant, they made up a rule, and then that rule gets challenged, and it's this ongoing thing. It's one of the things that happened to us with the Best Care project. So that still needs to happen. I was counting on a grant from the same grant pot of money that was doing the housing capacity analysis. That didn't come through. The HAPO office, the Housing Production Office, is supposed to be doing another round like now or in April. So I'm kind of waiting for that. Otherwise, I'm going to move forward with some money that I budgeted anyway and see how far we can get. And I'll probably use 3J for that as well, since they're already diving into our code with the HCA. So that's what's happening on those things. You guys will be the intent is to have you be the public advisory committee on those two things. So since we already have public meetings that are already public and on the record, those things will come here for vetting and such.
So
before we pass
go
something.
through the process of doing that, and then some new definition comes down for a particular code, then we have to do it again?
But yet typically they don't pass land use laws at such a rapid pace
Right.
to cause you to do this. But at this point, since 2020, like literally every year, they've been passing dozens of them. No code in Oregon is up to date. There is no land use code that is actually meeting state law. It's just not possible to keep up because they'll change it in a legislative session, but we have to go through an amendment process. And then it's like, well, what if they say no? Well, you can't, it's state law. Well, if it's state law, why do I have to go through amendment process?
Right.
So it's kind of this back and forth, like what's the rule and what isn't? Where do we have flexibility? Yeah, where can we meet the intent but not directly what you're saying in the code? So those are kind of the nuances that we really need to bring somebody on and help vet, and so that they can bounce that stuff off the state and make sure we're doing it in accordance. Doesn't take away the fact that we could still get challenged on it, but at least it gives us a little backup. So that's just kind of a wait and see on that, and hopefully we'll move forward in the summer. Two, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm already shared. Let me turn it on the AV. So I wanted to, as you're going up the hill, you've been seeing, wrong one, ASR 2 plant going in. So for those people who don't know where it is, when I say ASR, the Aquifer Storage and Recovery System, we have our treatment facility down here. That water just gets pushed into the main system, all the blue lines. It then goes into this pump here, pumps it up the hill. And it kind of works its way around basically back to our wells up on the hill. And we inject currently into the aquifer at this well, which we call the heliport well, because there used to be a heliport.
Okay,
Yes.
so the water's treated before it's put in
Yes.
the aquifer? Okay.
Well, it's treated there because that water needed to be treated that we pull out of those wells down at Crooked River Park. It goes into the main system. So it's not just that water that goes up here. It mixes, but that's how we determine the volume, and then we pump it up on the hill. So really all the valley floor water is getting pushed up in the wintertime. And then in the summertime, which is coming up here pretty quick, we're going to switch it. And then all the water we pump from up here will go down into the valley. And we'll reverse it.
So all this was on the Ben TV station last week.
Yeah, probably because I presented at EDCO
And
and a few others.
so we need to all ask Casey for his autograph
Oh,
because he was interviewed.
oh, good. We'll have to get
Well,
that.
Jason.
Oh, that's right. That was a different story. Yep. So what we're doing, then we got with the 30-inch water line we put down here, Meta and Apple helped pay for that. They've helped, actually, they were paying for the second ASR. This gives us a redundancy in our system so we can inject and pull with two different wells. That's going in right here. And I just, for information purposes, we're on our 7th cycle. This is the graph from last year. So we have one more this year that hasn't finished yet or is just about to. And it's looking like, and this is how it's kind of stacking up. It's a really busy slide, but basically you have your main aquifer level down here. First system, we've kind of bumped it up about, what's that, 10 feet? And you can see every cycle we've gained up to about 50 feet of our aquifer. But this last one, and the reason this was pumped up here, so why it's so much different, is we doubled the horsepower on our pump. So our new pump is 450 horsepower. The old one was 250. So that's why it's so much more powerful. But when we turned it off, it dropped right back down to here and actually ended up the same as cycle 5. So it'll be interesting to see where 7 ends up, to see if we've kind of reached the top of that aquifer and now it's more pushing outward versus up. But so far about 600 million stored. For reference, our entire city uses 700 million a year, including the data centers, everything, bulk water, everything we sell, about 700 million a year. So we were hoping to store about a year's worth, and we're about there. When cycle 7 comes out and we get this graph back from GSI, it'll be interesting to see if it bumped up or if it's just flatlining again. Because if flatlining again, we've reached our peak. And we don't want to keep injecting, and because if you push too far out, you can't recover. And we'll have to start looking at wells further down north to pull that back out. So anyway, I wanted to share that and see if you guys had any comments, because there's been a lot of news lately about water, especially with the snowpack we don't have this year.
There's also a lot on the news about the data centers and
the data centers with the governor's task force, and is it appropriate and all that. Prineville's been on those, has spoken at those meetings. We're going to speak on the water summit at the next one, talk about how that works. And to be honest, it's like there's kind of this generality saying, well, data centers, you shouldn't do this because of all these things. And there are places you probably should not do them. It really is, in our unique situation, has worked out and can continue to work out. There are places that they probably shouldn't be. But that's for those jurisdictions to determine, really. A blanket, no data centers in Oregon, I don't think would be a wise thing to do. So we're looking pretty good. We have that stored water. This is what we can use, pump. This is water we've stored over the winter so that we don't have to pump native aquifer in the summer. So that's what I had a comment on that. And then the next thing was our sewer and water plans. Actually, I did that in reverse. We have and that's why I had this graphic up. We have a $900,000, I think it is, grant, maybe $1 million grant, 900,000 of which we're using to assess and design all unconnected water and sewer areas within the city limits and some of the UGB. So we have areas of town like the Crestview area, no water or sewer in this area. Down in this area where we have no water, in the Hidden Springs area, up to Sea Hale with no water. And then you have these areas down, and it's in the county still, where we have no sewer and water, and it's just an eclectic mix of these old little tiny lots. We need to figure out how we're going to serve this area. So this grant is supposed to take all this and actually put on full designs, water and sewer systems, how we're going to do it for all those areas. The only area in the UGB we're not going to design with this is the northern area. Only because we have limited funds and that area is not having issues with their water sewer. It's a little more larger lot, irrigated fields. We do have a need for sewer up here to try to figure out how to serve these areas north of town. But ultimately our goal is to try to get these areas and have projects lined up in our CIPs going forward. If we happen to get a grant or some federal funding or state funding that comes out, it does every now and then, we'll have something ready to go and we can start working out these areas where some of the wells are going dry because they're too shallow. Some of them are only 20, 40 feet. And then the nitrates areas, especially in this area over here. Now we're going to concentrate on the city stuff first if we ever build, because they're in the city limits. But out here, it's the septic is becoming a problem, which is making the wells a problem.
Most of those wells aren't core cuts.
No, most of them.
They're just.
Exactly. There's a few condemned properties already. And so we just need to have a plan. So at some point we can administer it. This will be a little tricky because we'll have to probably annex the whole area, and that's not going to be popular. The roads are too narrow. How do we deal with all those different aspects of it? But at least we'll have an understanding of how we need to serve it with booster pumps and sewer pump stations, because a lot of this is probably going to won't flow north. It'll have to flow south and be pumped back out, is my guess. We just don't have the fall. And then we have that irrigation, that VOR pipe coming down the side here. very difficult to get under a 5-foot pipe. So everything's got to go north here. And that's our only connection point. This manhole here is about a foot deep. So that's it. That's the end of the line. This is deep enough to pick up some of Willowdale, but at some point it's going to daylight and we're going to have to flow south. So that's kind of that project. Anderson Perry got that contract. They will be, I think we're kicking off our first meeting with them next Tuesday on the 24th. So that'll be an interesting project, and hopefully we can get some of these areas connected and extended.
So if we are able to connect those areas, do the property owners pay for the connections?
So it all depends on how it works out. Typically what it will do is we'll have the design and a city project will do it, right? But they would still pay their system development charges and such to connect as anybody would. But they didn't have to pay to put the actual lines in.
What's the average cost for them?
Just for
Just for the system development?
so you'd only pay water and sewer. So we have it combined. Combined, every single home for all of our SDCs, water, sewer, traffic, and parks, and the connection fees is about 25,000. It's just water and sewer, you're around 15, about half of that, I think, is what it mostly is.
That's been the issue with that neighborhood there,
Mhm.
Willowdale and everything, the value's not there in the houses for that.
Right.
No, and so the other way to do it
Yeah.
is if we did get grant funding to do this, you could include the impact fees. Now, some of these projects are going to be mainline trunk projects, right, that are paid for typically by SDCs. So those theoretically could offset costs in the future. We update our master plans, just like when we did the Combs Flat Road, that was a transportation project that is included in our SDC methodology that then gets built. It's no longer necessary to provide that funding. So one aspect we did think about is if say we get another data center, for example, and we have another development agreement, we can include some of these things in there, or any kind of excess money, federal grants, and then you can just include the connection fees in with it, and they don't have to do that either. That would help incentivize people annexing and rebuilding those roads, because we're gonna have to widen those roads, annex people in. Worst case scenario, we just get the lines in the ground and then they
If you
connect as
do
they need.
That road's gotta be,
The road's gonna be,
Willowdale's gotta be.
it's gotta be rebuilt, all that kind of stuff. I do want to say, in case anybody does watch this later, we don't force connections. If we did do a project in their area, it wouldn't be a forced connection. We would set the meter, just like we did down on Fairview with Marty. We set the meters. We set the sewer cleanouts, and then as they need to connect, they choose to connect. And that's how that works. So, fun project. We'll just see how far we can get with that. We're going to try to carry that as much as possible. We'd like to actually get into some of the road design as well, if we can get to it. So that's the goal. That's all I had on that. Anybody have anything from your end? I know Ron did call. He said he wasn't going to be here, but he did have a question on the Laughlin Road project. Yes, those steps will have guardrails. They just aren't installed yet.
Oh, it took me a minute to figure out where you were talking about.
Yeah, so there, those steps that are going high up on that, they will have guardrails. They haven't got them in yet. So that was his question.
That project's really getting close.
It is getting close. A few of the buildings are close to final, and they'll start, if they haven't already started selling them.
They started selling, they've only sold a couple so far.
Yeah.
So,
And I noticed there was an open house sign.
yeah.
Saturday,
They have a
yeah.
model of there. Okay, so.
Aren't they starting letting the places go on the development by the hospital there? Didn't I see something about they'd opened up for applicants?
Yeah, so I'll just get into director's update. The Ocho project is kind of looking for a late April, May kind of opening. They've been advertising for quite a while if you knew where to look. It's big. They've ramped that up a little more. It's Prineville APTS, PrinevilleApartments.com. If you go there, you can actually put your name on the list. So I've been giving that out for people who ask. They're getting close. It's 192 units with their first phase. I think it's a total of 312 if they build the second phase. And for those watching, that's the hospital. Need to move this. Can't move that thing out of the way. Yes, I can. Oh, geez. Okay. So that's these apartments here. The buildings are getting finalized and getting close, but they need the batch plans to open to pave the streets and get all that finished. So that's going to take the longest. And then those will be ready to go. The ones on the Madras Highway are further behind. Obviously, they have 2 buildings going vertical. They're going to be a little bit longer. And of course, we just talked about the Laughlin projects. Those are opening and selling. So those are kind of the 3 multifamily projects that are continuing. There is not a lot of projects coming in behind it. We just talked to the county this morning at one of our kind of monthly updates, and it's commercial, industrial, everything is kind of slow, extremely slow. We will likely go ahead and single family will build 40, our standard 40 units a year. But as far as in that, it's all going to be up in the Iron Horse, Ocho Point area, up in here. So you see this subdivision going in, Monte Vista is building there. Polish is actually looking to pull out, but they want to sell the rest of this to Lennar. So that's going to go to council next week, only because we have an agreement that this part, the city property, goes into that Ocho Point HOA, and Lennar wants to do their own. So the idea is to phase 5 will remain in the Ocho Point HOA, and then phase 6 and the rest of these phases will just.
It's unfortunate it's going on.
It is. We've negotiated, HOAs and CCNRs. They'll maintain the street standards. They'll maintain the fence standards.
The houses, the quality of the houses.
It will.
Building is significantly different than the other.
It will be different. So we've kind of put standards in there so the transition isn't abrupt. They'll have kind of the design elements in place. The streetscape has to remain in place. They're going to maintain the fence standards, but they will. The benefit is you'll have a lower price point home, which is what people are looking for. Polished, there's a reason they weren't selling more than 1 a month, because they're just too damned expensive. They just too expensive, right? And if you look across the wetland, Lennar built all those and sold all those within the year. Now, they won't look like that. They will have design standards that won't look like that. But they're not horrible homes. They're not to the same standard as Polish, but it'll keep that development moving and keep that going. So we have phase 7 will be the next phase. Alternatively, if the city doesn't decide, because we don't technically have to sell our property, I think we ended up in a worse situation where we have kind of a mess here, and then Polish owns phase 6 outright, so they would be able to sell to anybody without any standards, and you would get whatever you get, right? The streets will be the same, but the developer could be completely different with no standards. Right now, we have an opportunity to control some of the standards, so that's kind of why we're entertaining that.
If you go back south, below the school, in there.
We've talked about that one several times. We have the construction plans. Of course, you guys haven't actually seen the subdivision yet. Is that I expect to be the next subdivision, but it's from a developer standpoint, when you see polish pulling out and you see these developments not moving and other developments not moving, you're kind of scared to pull the trigger. Because once you do, you have a tax liability that you have to maintain. And that's 47 lots, 50 grand a year sitting there in taxes. If you're not building homes, no one wants to do that. So the idea is if he could market some of the lots to somebody, then he could plat it, sell that chunk like he did last time over here.
I'm sorry, who's the owner?
It's Brett Morgan. He sold the DR over here, but kept a lot of them, and he's building those himself. Same principle. He needs a buyer to buy some of them because he's not a Hayden Homes. He's not a J.R. Horton. He doesn't have that kind of cash flow. So he needs a little help in that manner. But I think he's come up with a good plan, and it'll be a nice neighborhood if we can get that one off the ground. It's just the timing is what he's working on.
About out by the husband's house.
Rooted Homes?
Yeah.
I haven't heard from them at all. They did buy it though. Well, Core bought it. You can see that there. We did help them with the infrastructure on that part of that state grant. They do own it. But they were relying on a state grant to help push that over the line. That was supposed to happen now. I haven't heard. So if they didn't get it this time, they'll likely apply for it the next time. And that was going to be 30 maybe, kind of townhome style condos is the idea there that would operate just like the Laughlin apartments or Laughlin condos.
Same concept.
Same concept.
You don't own the
They
land.
don't own the land. You buy the condo style. Is the idea because they're a little bit landlocked back here. They don't have necessarily street frontage. And then we're working on potentially, I'm going to take this to council as well, is what's called a middle income revolving loan fund. It's a new state program. No one's ever used it yet. And there's 2 cities in the state that are trying to. And what it does is helps with that gap funding, basically, but for $4 million in this infrastructure necessity, I would do this development. So the state comes in and says, okay, here's a loan, but the city or the county have to be a sponsoring agent. And then, so they actually receive the funds as a loan, and then we grant it out to a developer. And then they develop the project. The taxes from those lots go back to the loan fund for up to 10 years or whenever that loan is paid off. So the city doesn't get those property taxes, neither does the county for a period of time. The fire department's the only one that still retains taxable value. In return, that they have to sell those homes at 120% of AMI or less. So it'll bring the cost of that housing down. So they're supposed to pass on that loan to the buyer. And then they're restricted for that period of time also. They can't just turn around and sell it unless it's to a specific type of person. There's an income level, the city and the county can actually put in criteria on who these lots can be sold to a point. Like if we really needed housing for teachers, for example, we could actually say, well, teachers have first priority or something like that. There's an income level, but there's also some caveats you can put in there. So it's kind of interesting program. Like I said, it hasn't been used yet. We don't know the ins and outs of it totally, but the idea is that fund could maybe spur one of these developments to occur if their development lended itself to hit that price point. So that's kind of what's happening in the housing world. Commercial, we got the Horseshoe trying to finish up their stuff. The tap house at the end on 2nd Street should be opening here in April, May. They're getting close.
Heard a complaint about the Horseshoe painting over the mural that was on the side of the building. My person was really upset about that.
It's their building.
I know. I was like, hadn't even noticed that they painted over.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Actually, they did a good job with the paint. It's like a different, and they added some elements to the building to make it look a little nicer. So that it's turning out pretty good. And then the Second Street project, those are only two commercial projects that are really happening right now. Everything else is on the hill. You got Oppenden finishing their data center, CVI finishing their industrial kind of manufacturing plant. And that's basically all that's happening up on the hill. There's a few other little builds that are finishing up, but we're not receiving any new applications either. So it's really slowing down. I don't know if that's just a calm before the storm or if it's kind of a trend, but we'll see going forward. Any other questions or comments, Marty?
Yep.
Let me put through my brain, maybe it'll
What-
come, oh, I know what it was.
Good.
What about the problem out here on North Main, the old mill where that,
Yeah, the hemp plant. Yeah, you guys got an email about that. So I drive by this hemp plant every day. I smell it too. I didn't this morning, which was nice, but I've been in contact every year this comes up. It used to be in November, it's kind of migrated to February. They changed their filtration systems. It seems to go away, and we wait till next year. This year, it didn't go away. Right now, we're working on a plan to somehow add a filtration system to their storage area where they store the milled hemp when it comes in to see if that is the cause. Beyond that, I don't know what else to do. Eventually, I've told these guys multiple times, even when they first started back in 2019, it's like, this is not a great spot for this. It's an old mill, it's heavy industrial, I get it, but there are homes around it. This is not a great site for you to do this if you can't control the smell. They said, oh yeah, it's not a problem. We didn't have any reason to not believe them since we had two others in town that did not have that problem. We toured a few over in Culver and a few other places that did not have that problem. They weren't the same size. So maybe it's just the straight volume that's having the problem, or just the fact that those buildings are older and they can't seal them. I don't know. Because eventually the homeowners around there are not going to put up with it if it's I wouldn't put up with it.
what could happen? Revoke their,
Yeah, so what I think would happen, and of course this would have to be a conversation with our city attorney, but our land use code basically says you can't cause a nuisance.
right,
What determines a nuisance? We have certain things in there: noise, smell, dust, all those, right? But at what level does it cause a nuisance? City council would have to probably determine that based on a public hearing. Like, yeah, we got people and this is their backyard and they can't open their windows in the summertime. This is not okay. And then they either mitigate for it, or which they haven't been able to do so far fully. And I've never had to shut down a business before, so I don't know if that even how that would work. But this is the first time that's there. We've always been able to mitigate, and that's the goal, is just to get them to the point where it's, I think people would be okay if it's a day or two a year, every now and then, just like the old mill that was there that kicked dust up or they had noise or whatever they were doing, but it was temporary, right? It wasn't constant for a month kind of a thing. So hopefully we can get that under control.
What about the Burns Butte pool / rec center / whatever?
We're still in that cost feasibility. We did tour the Redmond facility that they're building over, what is that?
Oh.
27th, way out north of Redmond. So it's kind of interesting when you're touring that Redmond facility, you kind of go, wow, this is the perfect size for Prineville. And they're building it in Redmond.
Yeah, they're building less than what they wanted.
It's too small for Redmond. They only have one full basketball court, half 25-meter pool. It's nice. It's a nice facility. Don't get me wrong, but they're 3 times our size, and they're building something that would barely fit our community. So we took that kind of knowledge back. We look at our facility, which we designed to be as large as we think we could possibly fit on the site. That doesn't mean we're going to build that entire thing. And we'll probably have to scale it down. Some of the comments that Redmond made were kind of on point. Like they wanted a 50-meter pool, competition pool, but the exponential maintenance on that is staggering. So we probably have to come back down to a 25 and you just swim more laps. Just because of the pumping and the maintenance systems that you have to put in there, the mechanical systems.
I know.
With that much more. So it's probably not realistic that we build the facility as we showed it. But we wanted to know it could fit and we could expand to that and make that work.
I know one of the things they've talked about at Redmond, at the Cascades Center, which is where I go now, that they're probably going to have, to have more like aqua fit classes with a smaller, they're gonna have to limit the people that can participate.
Yeah.
Because of the size of the pools, there's gonna be more than one pool, but
there is a competition pool, a rec pool, and a kind of an exercise pool. They're separated. Yeah.
based on the size of those pools, you'll have to enroll in a specific class and only attend that class, not just show up whenever you want to,
Yep.
you know, kind of thing.
Yeah, they're just hard to maintain. They're always subsidized. Pools are not something that make money.
Why in the heck don't they talk about building it down by the high school where it'd be close enough for swim teams and things to
Primarily
have to commute?
Primarily because we don't own the property. We own this property. Combs Flat Road provides a big arterial road to handle that traffic. And it puts it more into kind of a neighborhood style. And we have the water, the sewer, the power, all that infrastructure has been built. We'd have to buy the property and rebuild it down there. I guess I should point that way, to make something like that work. Now, we did look at that on the Colson property. You know, that would down here.
Mhm.
But again, you're already trying to build something and you've already built the infrastructure and you own the property in one area. Why would you go down? And we've already kind of made that our rec area. It just lends itself to be both the recreation center and the pool.
And I would, Marty may disagree, but I would think this would be less desirable because of the dust from the fairgrounds and all of the, you know, what goes on.
You got a lot of activity. The fairgrounds does get packed, so we're already slamming Main Street. So there is something to say about that. There's not a lot of homes around this in walking distance, whereas there are up there quite a bit. I mean, that entire northern area of town can walk. I mean, granted, these probably could, but they don't have any direct access. There's no trail systems. We're kind of building this to lend itself for that. And then if you eventually have all this in homes, you can see that concentration of people around that rec center just starts to make more sense for the long term. So that's kind of why. And plus, this is a great place for homes. It's nice flat ground, you know, so eventually these will likely all be housing next to these parks. So, you know, if we had a big enough area, it would be something we would do down here. We just simply don't have it. And if they did expand down here, it would probably be necessary to expand the fairgrounds, not a rec center. And that was another competing interest on this property, was a potential expansion of the fairgrounds. So that was another reason. Anything else? Like I said, April 21st will be our next meeting. If we get something in at that time, obviously I'll schedule it. Hoping to have something on one of these HCA or code updates at that time to kind of mull over, and hopefully we can start actually doing some long range planning work.
Tasha, I'll save you a phone call. I will be in Oklahoma in it.
Cushing?
Yes.
Okay, anything else?
Oklahoma City area,
No?
nothing else.
Okay, we ready to adjourn?
Sure.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Really wrong.
Yep, it's an hour off.
I did fix that one though.
You could climb up and fix that one.